I think the joys of being a freelance creative producer, it means I get to go into so many different worlds. And yeah, I'm kind of a bit of a free spirit, so I sort of let my intuition guide me, as well as just looking at what's relevant in the world and what's needed right now. So I sort of let that dictate the projects that I get involved with as a producer. And then I've got my other side, hustles, and I'm just doing lots of random things really, just sort of getting the most out of life.
Hey everybody, Mark Arinsberg here with The Purenow Show. This is episode number 18. My guest today is Olivia Cheung. Olivia is a producer and content creator with an effervescent personality and a perpetual smile on her face, doing all kinds of community building work through public art projects while working with top creative professionals, producing work at the highest level. Here we go.
I think the main drive and interest is just people's stories. I think the human connection and soul and people's journeys, I think I'm the most interested in. I think as a producer, I'm there to support a lot of other creative visions, but as well being a creative myself. The passion and social advocacy that is really important in the work that I choose to be a part of. It's nice that it shows, because that is definitely something that I align myself with and definitely try to, especially having done the hard yards, working up in production, but now sort of at a stage where I can have a choice to choose the projects that I'm working on. So yeah, I feel really privileged to be where I'm at now. When I was growing up, not really. I think I understood that I lived in many worlds, and I never fitted in one world, you could say. Growing up in Australia, growing up in in a pretty Caucasian surrounding, Western surrounding, but then going home to a very Chinese family with Chinese culture and values. And my parents instilling in me, like, how many Asian faces do you see on television? None, and that's how I ended up working in Asia for about 7 years. I worked in Hong Kong, Japan, China, Singapore, and all over. I think I just saw it as, one of these typical globalized third culture kids where I could sort of have my foot in every door, but never be maybe fully in one door. But I think it allowed me to sort of step into these communities and never really come across as a threat. And I guess, I don't know, I could think about how people perceived me, but I was just sort of wandering in and out of these worlds as a curious being and always curious about these cultures and these communities that I was stepping into the world to, and really respectful of where they've come from, and then trying to find my place in it. So I think that's always been a guiding thing for me, even in my career. And yeah, I think I grew roots in my high school. Everyone's had different high school formative experiences, but in this particular high school, leadership and participation was a really big thing. I remember at 16, I watched a documentary on child soldiers in Uganda. It was called Invisible Children, and I broke down. It really affected me as a young teen, just I guess, you're born in Australia, in an affluent country, and so realizing the inequalities of the world. And I was like, I just can't just go to, Hollywood and pursue my own dreams. Like, there's people suffering. And so I ended up joining a youth aid organisation, and it was the first youth-run organisation in Australia called Oak Tree Foundation. It was started by just a bunch of teens. Whoever started it, he actually runs the Global Poverty Project in New York, which brings a lot of celebrities, and they have these big advocacy aid concerts now. It's quite big, but Hugh had started this youth aid organisation and asked me to join. And it was kind of a mixture of these things, like school and doing arts, but also volunteering. And I volunteered for about 5-6 years, and it was there I sort of met my tribe and young people who really cared about making a difference. But also, I think what was important for me was also having fun and being part of life. And so a lot of these strong rooted values, which I still carry with me today as a producer, in my work, as a human being, I think stemmed from a lot of those experiences in my formative teen years. I ended up couple of years in South Africa. I was volunteering in the townships. That was one chapter of my life. Came back. Parents are like, yeah, how many Asian faces do you see in television? Like, how much money have you wasted away, like volunteering? Why don't you go over to Asia and like try, get into your career and get some work experience? And I went to Hong Kong, and I ended up working there and starting my career off as a production coordinator. and then ended up being a film fixer, bumped into a New York crew that was doing this big Starbucks ad and like, can you find 20 monks drinking Starbucks, in Jedburgh? I was like, I actually just met somebody. And so I combined my love for travel and meeting people, finding new locations. So it kind of naturally came to me, that producing role, just that open-heartedness and just like getting things done. And that's how I fell into, I guess, production and film. I did do a little stint in Germany as well. So I've kind of had a very international, broad experience doing lots of things and been a producer for about 12, 13 years now. And then, in the last couple of years in lockdown, especially in Melbourne, the most lockdown city in the world, I managed to tap into my own voice again, creative voice. I think for a long time, supporting a lot of directors, a lot of artists, and being really passionate about their work, I've sort of put my own creative voice aside. But when everything shut down, I was able to tap into it again and just listen in on that soft spoken voice that is just gentle, I think, in all of us, and whether we listen to it or not. And despite being in lockdown, I was able to, have a lot of hope and ideas for my community, even within my 5K zone. So I started this neighbourhood group and ran all these community arts initiatives just to keep people's spirits up in these really trying times. It's highlighted, I think, a lot of things in our society and as well within like myself personally. So I think it's a really good shift for change. So I just won a grant and it's to do this podcast called Half Ties. It's part of Multicultural Arts Victoria. And it's basically an idea that came out from I'll say conversation or maybe an argument that my partner and I had. He's a composer. We met in London and a musician, and he's half Finnish, half Ghanaian, and obviously me being Australian Chinese, and we always sort of talk about the things that we love about our culture and what we don't like about our culture and each other's cultures and whatnot. Then there's this prospect of future and potentially having kids, and what are they going to be like? Are they going to be so mixed up? What a mixed bag. And so what things are we going to teach them? And so it's quite interesting once you put yourself in that sort of parent headspace. I don't know if you have kids, Mark, but
I do. Yes.
Oh, there you go. I could probably learn a thing or two from you, let alone, mixed culture parents. And I'm like, why don't we speak to other people who've been doing this for way longer? So that was the idea. We did a little trailer and I just recently got a grant for it. So that's in the works for next year. But I think it's fascinating. I think it's a great way to learn about other cultures. We're in such a mixed melting pot in the world and especially in Australia. But I think unless you have human interaction and a relationship with these people, it's sort of like you only know from what you read from the news or whatnot. So I think it's a chance for anybody to really engage with somebody from a different culture and also learn from people who've been doing it for such a long time. I stepped out of film TV to work on this council project. It's a public art and music program, but we're basically reactivating the city with street art and music gigs because Melbourne's been shut down for a long time. It's also to give money back to the arts, which has suffered so much in the last couple of years, and especially Melbourne being a big arts and culture hub. So it's giving work to creatives, it's bringing people back into the city, it's helping people engage with art, and I think that is an interesting area that I am personally exploring right now, talking about these really important issues of our time, but making it accessible, and that's what art is. And so, I feel really privileged to sort of step out of my film producing into this public art producing. It's something that I'm bringing in my own little neighbourhood. I started a neighbourhood group in my Waxman, it's called the Waxman Lockdown Group, and about 150 houses in my neighbourhood have joined since we had this 5K restriction. And I've just been running amok. Like my mum's always like, who are you bothering now? I was working in an agency full-time then, and usual agency life, working 12, 15 hours a day, busting your guts, working for clients that you don't really believe in, or their product and their messaging, but you just got to do it. You're a producer, that's what you do, that's what you've been hired to do, don't give your opinion kind of thing. And it was International Women's Day. I got asked by another creative director to a producer, an ad for gender equality, and obviously looking for a female producer, but all the, creatives and writers were men, normal kind of vibe. And then when he asked me to reach out to a director, I said, well, you should definitely get a female director for this. And he'd written the script, and he said, but are there any out there? I was like, didn't believe it. I was like, yeah, there are. And he's like, yeah, but are they any good? And I was just so furious. I just couldn't believe he said that. And he's been around for ages. And I was just like, what are you saying? And so I kind of got, that fire, got really angry. I don't get angry very much. I got very angry and kind of put a call out with my network with like just female directors and filmmakers, and the freelance crew just came, and just like us, like there was just so much support. Not that I told that story and that's why, but I was like, we got to do something together, as women, we got to bond together, especially in this industry. And